Hey Cleveland, welcome on into the Dawgland. On today's video, we are going to go over the new Browns quarterback room, and that includes a couple of free agent signings, the trade that they made, and the draft picks. And I can't do this by myself. Got alongside me Jackson McCurry. Jack, we have a brand new quarterback room for the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson's still in there, but we're not including him in this conversation because I don't anticipate him ever suiting up for the Cleveland Browns again. But we had our live draft show a couple weeks ago, and which was a lot of fun, and we really appreciate everybody who stopped by and hung out with us for those couple days, and over 9 hours of live streaming that we did to kind of cover the draft. At the end of day two, the Browns drafted Dillon Gabriel, and in day three, they ended up taking Shedeur Sanders, who fell all the way down into was that the fifth round that they picked him at. So, which was very surprising to say the least. So we now have this quarterback room that consists of Gabriel, Sanders, Joe Flacco, who they brought back as a free agent, and Kenny Pickett, who they resigned. But let's talk about the draft here to start, and your thoughts about the Browns taking two quarterbacks in this year's draft.
Well, I mean, it's well documented on the live stream. Like when I found out that they were picking Dillon Gabriel, I laughed because I was surprised. I think we all were that there was interest there, despite like there was some reporting that the Browns like Dillon Gabriel, and I kind of pushed it off and it was like maybe they take two quarterbacks and he'll be the guy on day three that they pick. And because I think the assumption was we were going to take like Jalen Milroe or maybe a Jackson Dart if he had slid to day two, which ultimately he didn't. But when they drafted Dillon Gabriel, I was surprised. But then when you watch him and you see some of his tools and his traits, he fits what Kevin Stefanski likes in his quarterbacks. He likes pocket passers who are accurate, throw a good football. It just seems like he makes a ton of sense, and I was understanding of why they selected him. Obviously, his height, his size, obviously those are some causes for concern. There's a lot of people that are indifferent on Dillon Gabriel. But I mean, I look at it like this, Anthony. If he was a 6'1", 6'2" quarterback, I could have seen him going early day two, maybe even late day one, because of the physical tools and traits that he has to be a quarterback. I think obviously the size just plays a heavy factor into him. And then obviously, like everybody knows the love that I have for Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback prospect. And when they traded up for him on day three, I was ecstatic. Like I was out with my girlfriend. We were at a store and like my phone went off and it said the Browns moved up for Shedeur Sanders. It was one of those happy moments that I've had as a Cleveland Browns fan, just because the fact that we got him in the fifth round of the draft when a lot of people expected him to go in the first round, and the fact that he was still there entering day three, I think was a shock to us all. So you bring two guys in that I think both fit what Kevin Stefanski likes in a quarterback. I think they both can fit the scheme that we're going to run here in 2025. And now you add them with, the veterans that we have in that room. And I think it's going to be an interesting competition starting here in a couple weeks once they get out on the field for OTAs, the mini camps, and then obviously once training camp starts later this summer. It's going to be a fun, interesting battle here with this QB room for sure.
Do you have any issues with them drafting two quarterbacks? Because they drafted two quarterbacks, two running backs. Like I was for sure, thinking that we were going to draft at least one, but we ended up drafting two. With where these four guys sit, were you surprised that we ended up picking two of them?
Not really, because I think at that point when you're looking at the board, and I don't know exactly where the Browns had these QBs ranked. We've seen a lot of different reports. I think the latest one this week was that Gabriel was the second rated quarterback on their board, only behind Cam Ward. Jeremy Fowler reported that even if Jalen Milroe was on the board there at 94, he obviously went pick 92 to the Seattle Seahawks. that we were still taking Dillon Gabriel. So it just shows that the Browns were pretty high on him. I know that they did a private workout with him. They obviously worked with him at the Senior Bowl. And then I think I seen a clip going around with Shedeur where he said after they took Dylan Sampson, like he was one of their last players left on the board. And then Andrew Berry made the decision that they were going to try to move up. So I think it showed that they were pretty high on both these guys. And I think they were I think obviously done drafting at that point. They traded their final 2 picks to move up to leapfrog the Philadelphia Eagles to take Shedeur. So I think that kind of tells you they felt worried about Shedeur going to the Eagles and he wasn't going to be able to slide to wherever they were trying to move up to. But in terms of them trading or drafting 2 quarterbacks, I'm okay with it. I think we knew the plan all along is with them acquiring the extra first, moving back with Jacksonville, that they like these quarterbacks in the 2026 class that could potentially come out. But at the end of the day, I think they recognize, like, we really like Dillon Gabriel. We really like Shedeur Sanders. Let's bring them in. Let's have them compete with Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. And then whatever happens in 2025. If one of them turns out to be a good quarterback, then you got 2 ones next year to build around them. But if neither one of them show any signs of being the potential franchise quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, then you go into 2026 knowing we drafted these guys in the 3rd and 5th round. We aren't committed to them to be our long-term answer. If we like one of these guys in 2026 or enough, and they're in a position to go get him, and they think that guy could be the franchise guy, then they don't really have to force their hand with these draft picks. They took them, they're taking the dart swings or the dart throws and seeing if one of them potentially sticks. But if not, you go looking for the answer again next year.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, 3rd round, you probably expect them to, probably be a backup quarterback at least. 5th round is lottery ticket. Like, there's really not too many, recently 5th round picks that panned out. The only one the last few seasons, Puka Nacua was drafted in the 5th round. So, those are more so lottery tickets once you get into the later half of the draft. So I don't have a problem, that they took 2 guys. I just thought, Shedeur was going to be much earlier than he was. And, if you kind of rearrange it, like if you were to take, Shedeur where you took Gabriel where you took Shedeur, I don't know if there would be like much of an issue with it. Granted, I don't know if they would like trade it up for Gabriel at that point, but, I just think that this strategy and outlook for the season, they're going to go into it with these 4 guys. They're going to keep 3 on a team. I would imagine you're going to get one of them to the practice squad. We're not sure who that's going to be at the moment yet, but because I don't think they keep 4 on the roster when you head into the actual season.
I wouldn't rule out a trade of one of the vets, honestly.
Yeah. And we could talk about that too. But let's compare Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel a little bit here. Pretty similar quarterbacks in college. Both had almost 4,000 yards passing. Shedeur had more passing touchdowns, 4 more interceptions, but the completion percentage, 72.9 for Gabriel, 74% for Shedeur Sanders. And I think that's really key when you look at what Stefanski has done with his offense. And you go back 2 years ago with Joe Flacco, like a lot of high percentage throws, quick timing throws, and both of these guys, I believe, are capable of doing that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think even when you dive into it a little more, Shedeur, I think, only averaged like 7 yards per pass attempt. Dillon Gabriel averaged 8.6. I think, and I know Shedeur's like away from Colorado, his yards per attempt were even lower. And I don't know if that has something to do with, the offensive scheme. Is that with his arm strength? Is it the fact that, in Colorado with the air being a little thinner, that, there's more aloft to his throws up in, the Rocky Mountain State. So yeah, I mean, both were very accurate quarterbacks. Both, did not throw a lot of turnovers, which I think that's a great thing. Obviously, like, Shedeur does throw more interceptions there. one of the bigger knocks I think on Shedeur was he took a lot of sacks, which we know Colorado's offensive line was pretty terrible. Oregon, obviously, they had to, beef up and be more physical because they moved to the Big Ten conference, but they both played against pretty good competition. I would say Dillon Gabriel played against much tougher competition being in the Big Ten conference and, going to the college football playoffs. I think that really, I think that gives him the edge because he played in more competitive environments and in more important games than Shedeur. That's not a knock on Shedeur. That's just, obviously where they were at. They were in the Pac-12 last year, moved to the Big 12 this past season. So they're both really good, accurate throwing quarterbacks. So I think that's one of the biggest things with Kevin Stefanski is he loves accurate pocket passers, guys that take care of the football, and he hasn't hardly had that here ever being the Cleveland Browns head coach. We know Baker was very Brett Favre-ish when it came to throwing the football. We know what he just dealt with Joe last couple seasons with Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston, and Deshaun had his ups and downs in terms of protecting the football. So I think that's probably one of the biggest keys of why both these guys were brought here is that they take care of the football.
Yeah, if you look at the competition too, just to kind of touch upon it, the two games that Gabriel played against the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, as your shirt says, he played very well in both of those games. It's not like even though Oregon got blown out in that second one, he still played well in that game. So, playing well against really good competition says a lot about him. And, I'll touch back on what you said too. Like if he was 6'1", 6'2", he's probably a day one pick, but with how he played against some of these teams. So I'm really looking forward to see how he's able to translate that, to this level. And, look, when you look at a third-round quarterback, a fifth-round quarterback, I don't think you're going into the season with them expected to be your starter. You expected to bring them along slowly. And with the other two guys, which, we'll get into now, the other two guys that they have on their roster, Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, both of those guys can give you that until, maybe week 8, week 9, week 10, where you deem that one of these guys could be ready to start this season.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how the season's going. Obviously, I think I don't know about you, Anthony. I'm coming in with low expectations this year, just because we're playing a tough schedule on paper right now. Obviously, you look at the division. Obviously, we know Cincinnati's going to be back; they're going to be loaded. Baltimore's going to be loaded. Pittsburgh, we expect to be better. All expectations are they're going to get Aaron Rodgers. If not, then they're probably going to be on par with us. But it just depends on how the season starts, whether it's Pickett, whether it's Flacco. If, we're looking at week 6, week 7, and we're 2-5, 3-4, and they want to look for a spark, they might go to one of the rookies. But, like you said, the expectations with them being mid-round draft picks is, you expect them to not want to sit and learn, but the plan is for them to sit and learn until maybe midway through the season. But if Kenny Pickett's turning the ball over or Joe Flacco's turning the ball over, you're going to hear some noise from the fans saying, put in Gabriel or put in Shedeur. And obviously I think Shedeur gets the edge there just because of his popularity. And, just the fact that, a lot of the city is embracing him already. He's embracing the city. The fact that he's already been here for the last week or so, training, spending time in the community before rookie minicamp even starts. It's just going to be interesting. Obviously, we know what Joe Flacco is going to bring, and he's, obviously he's up there, 40 years old. He got time to play last year and didn't get to make the most of the opportunity in Indy that he did in Cleveland. And, Kenny Pickett's obviously looking to redeem his career, get it back on track to where, he gets into that Case Keenum, Andy Dalton type role where he's a backup and come in and be a spot starter and, maybe light a spark for an offense if he can get around the right coaches and the right teammates. And I think he's hoping to do that here in Cleveland. So, you want to see one of these vets, hopefully, take the reins and get the Browns back on track. But, I think if we're being realistic, Anthony, I think midway through the season, we will see one of these rookies out there on the field. And who knows, if Cleveland Browns history tells you anything, we'll see maybe 3 or maybe all 4 of these quarterbacks throughout the 2025 season.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if we saw all four of these guys just based on play, injuries, all that kind of stuff. And who knows? Maybe they want to give with the draft capital that we do have in 2026. Maybe they do want to give a fair shake to both of these guys. Shedeur and Gabriel. Just kind of give them a few games each, and that's if you know Pickett or Flacco doesn't start the year and completely light things up for half the season. Like you won't see a change at that point. But let's kind of be honest about where both of those guys are. I don't expect Joe Flacco to return to what he did 2 years ago. I think it'd be foolish to expect that. And Kenny Pickett hasn't been a starter in a couple seasons. Obviously he backed up Jalen Hurts last year, so it would be very tough for me to believe that he would be able to do that as well. And so I agree with you with the low expectations, especially with the hard schedule that we have. And next Wednesday we'll find out their official schedule for the whole season, and that will be interesting to look at and break down as well. So, but let's kind of get into where you think this is going to go in terms of who's going to start, who's going to be the backup, and then maybe who could be traded, later on. So if you had to list your four in terms of in order, how would you rate them?
Now, this is obviously as of May 7th when we're recording. And to quote Kevin Stefanski, I have the right to change my opinion. But as I look at it right now, I think Joe Flacco is the projected starting quarterback. I think Kevin Stefanski feels comfortable with him. Obviously, they had success together. I could see the competition going either way, honestly. I feel like the Browns see something in Kenny Pickett. They want to give him a fair shake in this competition. I don't think, they gave guarantees to any of these guys in terms of who's going to be the starter. But I expect Flacco to win the competition. Kenny Pickett will be the backup unless he's traded. I will put that caveat on there, and that's vice versa for Joe as well. If Joe gets traded, which I feel like if he was going to be traded, I feel like teams would have been in more demand for him. So I could see Pickett being traded if I had to guess, if it comes down to it. And then as far as the rookies go, I'm going by draft where they were drafted. I say Dillon Gabriel would be the third string right now, as things stand, and Shedeur would be the fourth string. Obviously, things could change if either one of them stands out in mini camps and the OTAs here in the next couple weeks as we go through June. Maybe it goes a different way once training camp starts. But I think you just base it on, status, and I would go Flacco, Pickett, Gabriel, Sanders as my projected QB depth chart right now as things stand here in early May.
All right, I have this a little bit different as you do. So I have this as a caveat of, either Pickett or Joe not being here at the end of training camp, and I think that, I think Kenny might get the nod because I don't know for sure if they're going to run it back with Joe, being the starter. I think that Joe would be a great backup if somebody gets hurt during the game. He's the one that come in, that kind of thing. So I think Pickett's going to get the nod to start the year, and I think Shedeur is really going to surprise a lot of people this year. I think that with the offense that he played in Colorado, I think he's really well suited to come in here and pick this thing up quickly. Um, and I believe that he's going to have a great offseason, great training camp. Hopefully, it translates into the preseason when we see him in action, and he's going to be the true backup quarterback of this team. And Gabriel, I they're going to keep obviously they're going to keep three of these guys. Somebody is not going to be here come the final 53-man roster, and I would tend to think that could be Joe, but I really think that Pickett, Sanders, Gabriel is kind of where I'm leaning towards how they're gonna rank out here. And look, if Pickett struggles, the first few weeks, I think they'll turn it over to one of these two rookie quarterbacks, with it being Shedeur first.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the one thing that Sanders has the edge on over Gabriel is that Gabriel's never taken a snap under center. I heard somebody say that. I want to double check it just to make sure it's right. But they said that Gabriel's never taken a snap under center. Sanders obviously has, performing in a pro style offense at Colorado under Pat Shurmur. But yeah, I would say that would give him the edge, honestly, if we're looking at it and more comfortability in a pro style offense that Kevin Stefanski runs. I think you would give the nod to Sanders. But I personally just I'm going it by Gabriel was drafted over Sanders. You would think he would get the reps first over Shedeur, but then it obviously comes down to how does it go through rookie mini camp? How do these two compete against each other? Who's going to stand out more? And then once we get to more on the field work during OTAs and obviously the mandatory mini camps, how's Kevin Stefanski going to juggle all this? How's he going to make sure all four quarterbacks get reps with the first team or second team to make sure they're all getting some work? Because we know somebody's obviously going to be the starter and get the majority of the reps, but how's he going to evenly spread it out amongst the four here?
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult task, to say the least. And I forget who has that quote. It might have been Bill Polian back in the day. If you have more than one quarterback, you don't have any. So I hope that's not the case. I hope we have one guy in here that's able to stick it out for us and play well this season. It's obviously to be determined. And with our low expectations, we're not expecting a whole lot this year. I think the last time I looked at their over under in terms of win total, it was 4.5, 3.5 or 4.5. So, Vegas isn't expecting much of them as well. I think they're more than a 4 or 5 win football team. I think they'll be closer to that 7-10 record, 8-9 record, kind of in that spot. So we'll see which one of these guys is able to get us to that point. So I'm very excited to see how this is all going to shake out, how, like you said, how Stefanski is going to manage all this, because not only is there guys you got to get snaps of, but there's going to be a ton of outside noise, especially from the fans that have already made Sanders jersey the number one selling rookie jersey at the moment. So it's not going to be easy in Berea, when those hard decisions have to be made.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say the best case scenario here for the Browns is one of those rookies stands out. Pickett or Flacco, whoever the vet is, starts out the season, and then one of those rookies comes in and does what Baker did. I wouldn't even say what Baker did, but if he can come in, inject some energy into this team, they get rolling. If they win 6 or 7 games, whichever rookie it is, and then you go into 2026 knowing one of those guys is your quarterback, you have Jacksonville's pick and your pick to get 2 starting positions wherever on the team that you need them. And then you build around that quarterback, which is going to be on a really cheap contract. And to really sum it up, one of these guys becomes our Brock Purdy, and then you move off of Deshaun next offseason or however they want to go about it. And you get hope for the Cleveland Browns again. If one of these rookies, whether it's Gabriel, whether it's Shedeur, gives the fan base some hope and shows they can be a good to slightly above average NFL starting quarterback, then you feel really good about this QB room and how they've decided to build it this offseason. I think that would help buy Stefanski and Barry more time. Because if they found one of these quarterbacks in the middle rounds and they turn into something, then that gives them a little more time to continue what they've been doing since 2020 and hopefully gets the Browns completely out of the Deshaun Watson era and helps the franchise move forward, towards the late 2020s into the 2030s when hopefully we're in that new stadium in Brook Park and one of these quarterbacks turns into something. But I can't wait to see how this competition's going to go and how it ultimately all shakes out this coming season.
I have one final question for you. Do one of these two rookie quarterbacks have to show promise this year for Stefanski and Barry to keep their jobs?
I would say yes, because if they go 5-12, 6-11, and it's like Kenny Pickett half the year, and then you only get one of these guys for like maybe a couple games and they show you something but didn't show you enough to really like convince yourself that they're the guy for sure, but you're sitting in the top 10 and you have a chance to get Lenoris Sellers or Drew Aller or Cade Klubnik, or one of these quarterbacks is sitting there, whether it's our pick or whether it's the Jacksonville pick. I think you have to be sure that one of these guys is the answer. Because, like, say they only start like 3 or 4 games and you're not really convinced that they're the answer, and you're sitting there with a chance to draft a quarterback next year, I feel like that's a pretty tough thing. So I feel like if they want to see that one of these guys is the guy, then they're going to give them more than enough time to prove it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, if either one of these guys, don't show any promise, and and who's to say, like, if Kenny Pickett doesn't have like a Sam Darnold type year this year, like if none of these guys are able to do anything this year, I think it'd be very hard to bring anybody back, because you'll be in a spot to draft one of the top quarterbacks next year, and at that point, you probably would want a different evaluator making those decisions and a different coach coaching those quarterbacks at that point. So I don't think it's going to come to that. But we've seen some crazy and fun things in our time while doing this podcast, to be prepared for just about anything that happens. So it should be a lot of fun and very interesting. All right. Anything else about these guys you want to go over, or are we all good to get out of here?
Yeah, we're good to get out of here. I'm just anxious to see how this all is going to shake out. And of course, it starts this weekend with the rookie minicamp.
Absolutely. And it should be a lot of fun to dig into all that. And, be sure to give Jack a follow on X at Jack McCurry08. Give me a follow at Anthony Joki, Joki. Be sure to give the Dawgland a follow here on YouTube. Give us subscribe to our channel here.
Hit the like button right below me.
Yes, that'd be wonderful. Follow us on X, Facebook, all the accounts. And as we get on and out of here, always remember, go Browns.